The rain in Manhattan didn't just fall that night, it slammed against the glass walls of the Winston Tower penthouse as if the sky itself was angry. Inside, a man stood in the dark, staring out over the city he had conquered, but unable to silence the single question pounding in his head. What if I was wrong? Alexander Alex Cole was a man who never doubted. Not in the boardroom, not in negotiations, not in life. His billion-dollar empire was built on precision, timing, and ruthless decisions. But tonight, as lightning flashed across the skyline, he felt the first crack in a certainty he had carried for 3 years. It had all started on an evening that should have been like any other. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Alex stepped into his home, loosening his tie with one hand while scrolling through messages on his phone with the other. The apartment was silent as silent. No faint hum of the dishwasher, no soft music from the living room, no sound of footsteps from the kitchen. Emma, he called. She appeared from the hallway, her auburn hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing one of his oversized shirts. Her face was unreadable. "You're home early," she said, but her voice carried a tension he couldn't place. Alex tossed his phone onto the counter. "We need to talk." Her shoulders stiffened. "About what?" He pulled out his tablet, swiped to a single screen, and set it on the counter between them. "About this." Emma looked down. It was a message thread, short, incomplete, and dangerously open to interpretation. She blinked, then looked up at him. "You think this means I don't think I know." His voice was clipped, cold. "Alex, it's not what it looks like. You didn't even ask me. I don't need to ask. I've seen enough." Her chest rose and fell with a slow, steady breath, but her hands trembled. "You're making a mistake. You've already made it for me," he said. For a moment, she just stood there. Then, without another word, she walked into the bedroom. 10 minutes later, she returned with a small suitcase. She stopped in front of him, her eyes glistening. "I loved you," she said softly, "but love without trust is just a prison." And with that, she was gone. What Alex didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Emma carried something more than heartbreak. When she walked out that door, she carried a secret that would one day shatter everything he thought he understood about betrayal, loyalty, and love. 3 years later, Alex stood in a downtown cafe waiting for a meeting that was already 15 minutes late. The door opened, and a familiar laugh drifted through the air. He turned. Emma stood by the counter, ordering a drink. But she wasn't alone. A small boy with dark hair and hazel eyes that mirrored his own clutched her hand. Alex's world stopped. Alex's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. The sound of that laugh had traveled through him like an echo from another lifetime, pulling memories he had long buried to the surface. He told himself it couldn't be her, that the city was too large for chance to play such a cruel trick. But when he turned, the truth stood only a few steps away. She was exactly as he remembered, yet not at all the same. The Emma he had known carried a quiet softness in her eyes. This Emma, she moved with a careful grace, as if she had learned to protect herself from the world. Her hair, once long and loose, was now pulled neatly behind her shoulders. But it wasn't her that made his breath catch, it was the boy at her side. He couldn't have been more than 3. Dark hair that refused to stay in place, a stubborn little chin, and those eyes, hazel with a faint golden ring near the pupil. The same eyes Alex saw in the mirror every morning. Alex's pulse quickened, and for a moment, he forgot to breathe. The cafe chatter faded, the music dimmed, and all he could hear was the rhythmic beat of his own heart. The boy was looking up at Emma with the same expression Alex remembered from nights when she used to wait for him to come home, patient, trusting. 1,000 questions crashed into his mind at once. Who was the boy's father? Where had they been all these years? And why, after everything, did seeing her now feel like the ground had shifted beneath his feet? He stayed rooted to the spot, afraid that moving would break whatever strange spell had drawn her here. But Emma turned her head slightly, and their eyes met. It was only for a second. Yet in that second the world seemed to hold its breath. Her expression didn't change, no surprise, no smile, no anger, just a calm that hid something deeper. The barista called her order, and she reached for the cup, her other hand never letting go of the boy's. She turned toward the door, walking past him without a word. Alex could have stayed silent, could have let her walk out of his life again, but his voice found him before his pride could silence it. "Emma." She stopped. Slowly, she turned back. The boy looked at Alex with a curious tilt of his head, and something unspoken passed between them, something that made Alex's chest ache in a way he didn't understand. For the first time in years, Alex felt his carefully constructed world tilt dangerously, as if one wrong move would send everything he had built crashing down. And yet, he knew with unshakable certainty that if he let her leave now, he might never get the answers he didn't even know how to ask. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma's eyes held his for a long, silent moment, and then, with a small, almost imperceptible smile that carried both sadness and strength, she said, "You already know." She turned again, stepping out into the rain. The boy followed her, glancing back at Alex one last time before the door closed behind them. Alex remained standing in the middle of the cafe, his coffee untouched. The sound of the rain outside now a steady drumbeat to the storm rising inside him. Something told him this was only the beginning, and whatever truth awaited him was going to change everything. Alex barely remembered leaving the cafe. The rain had soaked through his coat before he even noticed he was outside, walking without a destination, his mind replaying every second of what had just happened. That boy's eyes, his eyes kept flashing in his head like a light he couldn't turn off. By the time he reached the curb, a car had already pulled up to take him back to the Winston Tower. The driver asked if everything was all right. Alex nodded, but the truth was nothing felt right anymore. That night, his penthouse didn't feel like home. The city lights glittered beyond the glass, but they no longer carried the sense of victory they once did. He poured himself a drink, then set it down untouched. His phone was in his hand before he realized it. Scrolling through contacts he hadn't looked at in years, there was no number for her anymore. He had erased her, thinking it would make forgetting easier. But forgetting had never really happened. He had simply buried the memory under work, travel, and a relentless schedule. Now, in a single unexpected moment, everything had come rushing back. He told himself it might not be what he thought. Maybe the boy wasn't his. Maybe he was just imagining the resemblance because he wanted answers. But the quiet part of his mind, the one that had always been right about deals and instincts, kept whispering otherwise. The next morning, Alex found himself outside the cafe again. Same time, same place, hoping for another chance encounter. But she wasn't there. For 3 days, he came back, sitting at a corner table with coffee growing cold in front of him. No sign of her. On the 4th day, he finally caught a glimpse, not inside, but across the street. Emma was walking quickly, the boy skipping beside her, holding what looked like a small lunchbox. They were headed toward a small brick building with bright letters on the awning, "An Early Learning Center." Alex stepped off the curb, his heart pounding, but stopped halfway. He couldn't just walk up, couldn't just demand to know the truth. If he did this wrong, she could vanish again, and this time, he might never find her. Instead, he stayed where he was, watching her crouch down to fix the boy's jacket before they went inside. The boy leaned forward, wrapping his arms around her neck, and she closed her eyes for a moment, holding him close. Alex felt something twist in his chest. When they disappeared through the door, he made a decision. For years, he had believed that walking away had been strength. Now he knew it had been fear of being wrong, fear of being hurt, fear of admitting he might have destroyed something worth more than everything he owned. He wasn't going to lose them again. He didn't know yet how to reach her or how to fix the damage he had done. But as he stood in the cold morning air, watching the door where they had gone, Alex felt the first spark of something he hadn't felt in years: hope. And beneath that hope, a deeper question stirred. If the boy really was his son, what kind of man would he have to become to deserve a place in his life? The following week felt like an unfamiliar kind of business negotiation, one where the stakes were personal and the outcome could not be measured in numbers. Alex began adjusting his schedule in ways no one at his company had ever seen. Meetings were shifted, flights postponed, and for the first time in years, he made his mornings free. Every day, he waited across the street from the learning center. At first, he told himself it was just to understand her routine, to find the right moment. But the truth was, he couldn't stay away. Watching from a distance, he noticed little details: the way Emma always knelt to speak to the boy at eye level, the way she laughed when he told her something animated, the way her expression softened whenever he took her hand. He had never seen her like this before. During their years together, she had loved him. Yes, but she had also been cautious, careful around the edges of his ambition. This Emma was free in a way that unsettled him. It made him wonder if she had found happiness without him, and if so, what right he had to step back into her world. On a Thursday morning, the moment finally came. She arrived later than usual, carrying a paper bag in one hand while guiding the boy with the other. Alex crossed the street before his nerves could talk him out of it. She saw him before he spoke. Her steps slowed, and her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she had known this was inevitable. The boy looked up at him with innocent curiosity, but Emma placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Go inside, Oliver. I'll be right there," she said softly. The boy hesitated, glancing between them, then ran toward the open door where a teacher was waiting. Alex's gaze followed him until the door shut. When he looked back at her, she was already speaking. "Why are you here?" He searched her face for a sign of warmth, a flicker of the woman he once knew, but all he found was steady composure. "Because I need to talk to you. You had years to talk to me," she said. "You made your choice. Maybe I made the wrong one." The words came out rougher than he intended. "That boy, Oliver, is he?" She shook her head sharply. Not here." The rain from earlier had stopped, but the air was cool, crisp, and heavy with the scent of wet pavement. Alex felt the weight of her distance pressing against him. "I'm not here to make trouble," he said, his voice quieter now. I need to know the truth." Her eyes flickered then, just for a second, and in that tiny break he saw something: pain, hesitation, maybe even longing, but it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "The truth," she said. "The truth is complicated, Alex, and I'm not sure you deserve to hear it." Before he could respond, she turned toward the center's door. The boy was watching from inside, his small hands pressed to the glass. Emma gave him a smile, then walked away without looking back. Alex stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the hollow space between them widen. But this time, instead of retreating, he knew he had to close it, even if it meant confronting the one thing he had avoided for years, the mistakes that had driven her away. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the first stirrings of something dangerous and unstoppable: determination. Alex had built his fortune on finding information no one else could. Competitors hid numbers, governments concealed regulations, partners kept secrets, but Alex always found a way to see through the curtain. This time, though, the stakes weren't a hostile takeover or a billion-dollar contract. This time, the truth wasn't buried in a document. It was buried in a life he had walked away from. The night after their encounter, he sat in his office long after everyone else had left, staring at the skyline, but seeing only her face. The memory of her voice, calm, controlled, and edged with something he couldn't name, kept replaying. "I'm not sure you deserve to hear it." Those words weren't anger, they were a wall. And Alex knew from experience that walls didn't come down by force. They fell when you understood why they were built in the first place. He started quietly. A call to an old mutual acquaintance, phrased carefully. Nothing that would suggest his true reason for asking. Then another call, and another. Every path led to the same conclusion: Emma had disappeared from their old social circles. Almost immediately after leaving. No scandal, no public fallout, just a quiet vanishing. On the fourth night, he found something: an address, tucked away in a neighborhood that was worlds apart from the glass and steel towers he knew. Early the next morning, he drove there, parking at the end of a street lined with trees that were just beginning to turn with autumn. Her building was modest, with flower boxes in the windows and a bicycle locked near the steps. He waited in the car, watching until she emerged. She was dressed simply, holding Oliver's hand, his small backpack bouncing against his back as they walked. They laughed about something, an easy, unforced laugh that belonged entirely to them. For a moment, Alex considered stepping out, but he stayed. afraid that showing up uninvited at her home would close the door for good. Instead, he followed, at a distance, through the school drop-off and into a small local market where she bought fresh bread and fruit. Every move she made felt deliberate, as if she had learned to make her life not just functional, but full without him. That night, unable to hold back any longer, Alex went back to the cafe where they had first crossed paths again. He waited until nearly closing before she walked in alone. No Oliver this time. She saw him instantly, and though her eyes narrowed, she didn't turn away. Persistent, she said, sliding her order to the barista. Determined, he corrected. There's a difference. She took her cup, stood across from him, and, for the first time, didn't rush to leave. Why now, Alex? Why after all this time? Because I saw him, he admitted, his voice low but certain. And if there's even the smallest chance he's mine, I can't walk away again. She studied him for a long moment. And if he is, then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he knows me. Something shifted in her expression, not forgiveness, not yet, but the faintest crack in the wall. She set her cup down, her hands wrapping around the paper sleeve as if for warmth. You want the truth? She asked. He nodded. Her next words landed with the quiet weight of a verdict. Then you'll have to earn it. She turned and walked toward the door, leaving him with nothing but the echo of her footsteps, and the knowledge that he was now on the edge of something irreversible. The days that followed felt like Alex was walking through a maze without a map. Emma had given him no instructions, no timeline, only the challenge that he would have to earn the truth. For a man used to contracts and clear terms, it was infuriating. But for the first time in his life, he understood that some things couldn't be negotiated, they had to be proven. He began showing up at the learning center, not to confront her, but simply to be there. Some mornings, he'd wait across the street until Oliver went inside, then leave without being seen. Other days, he'd stay until Emma came back for him in the afternoon, watching the way her face lit up the second he ran into her arms. One afternoon, a teacher stepped outside with a box of donations. She struggled to balance it, and before Alex could think, he crossed the street and took it from her. Emma was just arriving, and she saw the exchange. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Over the next week, small moments began to add up. He noticed her grocery bag tearing one morning and crossed the street to carry it for her. She thanked him quietly, no more, no less. Another time, the strap of Oliver's backpack broke, and Alex returned the next day with a new one, leaving it with the school staff without signing his name. Then came the evening she didn't expect him to be there. A sudden downpour had caught her and Oliver outside, and they ran toward the building's awning, soaked and laughing. Alex was already parked nearby, and before he could stop himself, he grabbed the umbrella from his seat and jogged over. Oliver looked up at him with wide eyes. "You're the man from the coffee shop," he said with the blunt honesty only children have. Alex knelt so they were eye to eye. "Yeah, I guess I am." Emma's gaze shifted between them, something unspoken passing through her expression. She didn't send him away this time. Instead, she let him walk them to the door, the rain drumming softly above the umbrella. It was a week later when she finally called. No warning, no greeting, just an address to a small park and a time. When Alex arrived, Oliver was chasing pigeons near a fountain while Emma sat on a bench, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She didn't make him wait. "The night I left," she began, her voice steady, I tried to tell you there was something you didn't know, but you wouldn't hear it." Alex felt the weight of every choice he had made pressing on him. "I know," he said quietly. "I was already pregnant," she continued. "I didn't tell you because you'd already decided who I was, and I didn't want our child to grow up in a home where trust didn't exist." He closed his eyes for a moment, the truth hitting harder than he had braced for. When he opened them, Oliver was running back toward the bench, cheeks flushed from the cold. The boy stopped in front of him, tilting his head like he was studying. A puzzle. Emma glanced at her son, then back at Alex. "Oliver," she said softly, "this is your father." The boy's eyes widened, then narrowed, as if measuring the weight of the word. Slowly, he stepped closer. "Do you like soccer?" Alex smiled, his throat tight. "I do now." Emma's lips curved in the faintest smile, and in that moment, Alex knew the truth wasn't just about biology, it was about showing up, about proving that this time, he wouldn't walk away. As the three of them sat together on that bench, the city around them carried on as if nothing had changed. But for Alex, everything had.